The biggest thing that is holding us back is quieting the conscious mind, because that is the very first step to access all the others. And that's why we have so many breathing techniques, mindfulness techniques. All of these techniques are really to quiet down that which is shadowing or blocking our ability to see into these and access these other dimensions. And the biggest thing that is holding us back is,
it's fascinating when we look at the parallels with so many different perceptions of reality and over a history, as ancient teachings, indigenous practices always have some form of expression that will translate into something that you can apply on a daily basis. For example, Taoism uses different sort of internal sort of processes, from physical shapes and forms right into internal assessment. Tell me more about your practice and what you specialize in as an expert in Yoga Nidra.
yeah, so the yogis or the philosophers, all of these different traditions are really pointing to a reality that's behind our reality, that which is there before, during, and after our thoughts, our feelings. All of these things are transitory, but there's something behind it that remains the same. And this is what Taoism, all of these different traditions are pointing to, that same thing in different ways. So Yoga Nidra, yoga, wholeness, Nidra, sleep. And so it's a way to enter what is called the fourth state, that which is always present via conscious sleep. So if you think about it, we're always either, as a human being, we're either awake, we're dreaming, or we're in deep sleep. And in some of the ancient Upanishads, ancient texts of yoga, they talk about how we can use the third human state, the state of deep sleep, as a way to enter what they call the secret doorway to the fourth. This reality, this presence that is always there. It's always there when we're awake. It's always there when we're dreaming. It's always there when we're asleep. But we can actually access this transcendent state through the biological state of sleep.
Wow. Now that sounds very reminiscent of a form, what we call transformative state, Shen Gong, and it could parallel. I'm really starting to want, a lot of the youngins out there that are obsessed with wanting to leave their bodies, but they don't really have any sort of grounding, which they go, oh shit, I made a mistake. Now, how am I going to make sense of this? So this seems to be a theme right now, especially needing masters like yourself to help people understand what that means to have that ability to transcend and basically be able to operate in what some physics models would refer to as a dimensional shift, or the ability to obtain all these different states. Now, Nigong that I teach is you are able to operate in every state at will.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm assuming that's what you're speaking of, and I would love to know more.
Yeah, so think of it as the human being is multidimensional. So there are different powers or realities, perceptions that we can access at these different dimensions of the human being. And then even beyond all these different parts of the human being, there is the ultimate being or the presence. So we can use all kinds of practices to access all the multi-dimensions of the human being, which in yoga we call the koshas. And that's basically the idea that we are not just this physical body that we see, but that surrounding the physical body, there's an energy body, which many people see like the aura, and then the mental body, the mind, the wisdom body, your intuition, and then the bliss body, which is the closest to this fourth state, this presence that we were talking about. So related to what you were just saying, as we enter into different dimensions. So for example, when I develop the ability at will, once I have developed these capacities, we can at will begin to shift to accessing the dimension of the energy body, where we can accelerate healing within ourselves, we can accelerate healing within others. At the mental body, we can see through, and we have penetrating insight into the truth of situations. And at the wisdom body, we actually not just see through to the truth, but we actually, what we call clairvoyance, clear seeing, extrasensory perception. And then finally, at the bliss body, when we have mastered that dimension, that is where we can actually manifest from the immaterial to the material. And this is where we know of saints from all different traditions who could literally pull things out of this infinite field and manifest them. Yeah, interesting stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's wow, you know, crazy. We refer to that as altering the material. Yeah, yeah. So it's immortality crystallized in the material. And strangely enough, that's the title of my last book. But in any case, you understand that the biggest component is your ability to phase through this. Now, when you access the tapestry, as we put it, you are feeling into this pulpability that would necessarily, to a subconscious sort of state, not be present. Whereas some people that are operating in the mundane reality, as a lot of my Buddhist monk friends would say, is not going to be aware of this other stream of tangibility. What you mentioned, the phases. What is the deeper processes that makes it a substance, as we put it, Fajun, the substance that you can alter the material?
Well, there's a couple things. One is that you touched on this really beautifully, which is that when the conscious mind, when we're so much wrapped up in the conscious mind, we actually can't access the other phases. So as we go down from the conscious to the subconscious, that's where we start to access, for example, the energy body, the ability to heal and be healed, to accelerate the healing within our own body and to help others heal. As we go even further down into the unconscious, so Yoga Nidra, this yogic sleep, is said to be able actually to reach all the way into the bliss body, which is not only the place where we manifest from the immaterial to the material, but it is also where our core programming is held, our karma. And this is where we can actually reshape how our thoughts, our patterns, our beliefs are actually manifesting into reality. So it's not just about manifesting a Porsche or, a new house. The most important thing that we want to manifest with this at the bliss body is to be able to actually shift our relationship to the world and our relationship to the transcendent. But in order to do that, what we have to do is first be able to drop from the conscious mind to the subconscious, and then from the subconscious to the unconscious. So the unconscious is kind of like where the programming is all held. The subconscious then is a result of what's in the unconscious. So if I unconsciously have a feeling of not being loved or not being lovable or something like that, then it's going to show up at the subconscious level as repetitive behaviors, repetitive patterns of maybe always putting myself second, assuming that I'm always going to be left out, assuming that I'm not lovable. So the unconscious acts as the core belief, and then the subconscious becomes the pattern, the visible pattern of behavior that results from the unconscious. So in hypnosis, for example, from my understanding, I don't have a lot of experience in hypnosis, so you'll have to correct me if you know more, is we go to the subconscious to change the patterns. In Yoga Nidra, many people report that they feel like they're actually going a level deeper to the very subtlest level of being where the patterns actually reside. But in order to do that, the first most important thing is the ability to drop out of the conscious mind in order to get to the subconscious and then the unconscious.
That's fascinating. I mean, I tend to teach hypnagogic sort of processes at an entry level, but when you're talking about what we call an epsilon consciousness, is a whole different ballgame. So once you enter each dramatic polarizing effects of this material state, we refer to that as yin and yang, the symbiosis, the tango that we have from a mainstream. There's one stream. For us, it's the primordial mother as an eternal immortal state of awareness. You are forever, forever. And from that stream, you have a construct that you would perceive as this material state where the distortion is very low and easily pliable for manipulation once mastered. So yeah, that epsilon state, most people would refer to that as a somnambulistic sort of deep state of awareness. So that is accessible instantaneously. I like showing people that, reverse hallucinations. I turn myself into Justin Bieber, wipe their name out, put them into the states of bliss. This is what's potential. That comes from understanding how to manipulate that state. But in essence, everyone has that ability to shift. What I find more fascinating is when you referenced altering the material is really something that Taoism alchemists are well known for. And that's this thing that is most exciting. That's what draws people to wanting to change the way they perceive reality. So could you speak more on that processes?
Yeah. So, first of all, the way that we are shifting from the conscious to the subconscious to the unconscious is by following the same brainwaves as sleep. So, as we go down through from beta, waking state, to alpha, to theta, to delta, we're passing through the subconscious and then to the unconscious. But we're doing it with a very gentle level of awareness. Different, it's the same but different as sleep. It's kind of like lucid dreaming, to give you an idea. And from that place, what we're doing is we are progressively entering into that bliss body state. And this is the finest, thinnest veil between our embodiment, the material, and the immaterial. So you could think of the immaterial as an infinite field of potential, like an ocean. And out of that, we as a wave, this body is kind of like a wave rising out of that ocean. And the finest, thinnest veil between the wave that this embodiment is and the ocean is at this bliss body. And according to yogic teachings, this is the place that we need to enter in order to manifest from the immaterial to the material. So typically what we try to do is we try to manifest from the conscious mind only, which isn't bad, but it's only half the picture. Because if we haven't gone all the way to the place where the form and formless meet, it's kind of like hooking up to the ocean, but you have no connection, no river to connect you to the ocean. You're going to have a very hard time. And so really what we're doing with Yoga Nidra or these kinds of practices is we're going to the place where the river connects to the ocean, and then we manifest from that place where there's a hookup between the infinite field and the material reality that we want to manifest into.
That would be in parallel for a Taoist path is between yin and yang. There is what we refer to the access to the gateway, that is the primordial mother. So between the breath in and the breath out, as you hold, we refer to that absorbing the riches. So I would imagine your respiratory techniques, which we have thousands, and I imagine you do too, is a very tangible, hit the ground running type of way to start to obtain this state that you're speaking of. Speak more on that.
Yeah, so I forget the exact word that you used. It was something like beyond the yin and yang, the primordial mother. There was some gateway. So this is interesting because in the yogic perspective or the yogic languaging, because we're all saying the same thing, I think, is the third eye. So the two eyes are like the yin and the yang. They see outward into the physical reality. The third eye is the gateway into this infinite field that we're talking about, or the primordial mother. So that is the field of infinite potential. And it's the place between, it's the place
2025. It happens. Life happens.
So this is the place between, this third eye is the place where we access what is beyond the breath in and the breath out, the stillness that is beyond it, beyond the yin and the yang. And when we bring attention to the third eye, especially having used breathing techniques to help quiet the conscious mind and enter into these subtler states, this is what the third eye is said to be the gateway, which is what reminded me, to not only to connect from the physical to the transcendent, but also to manifest from the transcendent to the physical. It's a two-way gateway. And we often think of it as it's like a frequency. It's an attunement that when you can tune into that channel, now you're connected. It's always there, but are you tuned into that frequency?
It's so magical hearing different lenses or listening to other people's understanding of their own ancient practices, because we all are ancient, we're eternal. So we're just, dipping in or slipstreaming at a certain point to remember who we are. And I just find it fascinating because that's exactly what we refer to it as. Yin is the absorption of all colors. Yang is the emission of all colors. And your mission, if you choose to accept it, Ethan Hunt, is to find the center point. And that Vesica point, once entered, you realize that there is no point and you're all things and nothing at the same time, referring back to what we've referred to as the great bellows, which is that you are contracting and expanding at the same time. You're all things and nothing at the same time. But aha, Watson, elementary, my dear Watson, how do we get from the human condition through the labyrinth of the finite mind, the bankrupt state, and then exit that labyrinth with the human beingness, the state of all things, being able to, and you and I are now unified, and that chill through your body, that awakening that you just had through the energetic field, meaning what some of my friends would refer to as parapsychologists, psychokinesis, is what we're experiencing. That is happening right now. So that is where unification comes in. We're actually doing it. The question is people are like, yeah, but Jifu, okay, now what? Create. Do it. It can't be this simple. Yes, it can be this simple. You can be operating in every state, every place, every person, everything immediately. Can you speak more on that?
Absolutely. And I think it comes back to it's quieting the conscious mind, because that is the very first step to access all the others. And that's why we have so many breathing techniques, mindfulness techniques. All of these techniques are really to quiet down that which is shadowing or blocking our ability to see into these and access these other dimensions. And the biggest thing that is holding us back is, so these unconscious patterns, like I was saying, in the unconscious mind, are floating up to the top of our conscious mind. So think of like the depth of an iceberg underneath the water, but what we see above is the conscious mind, the tip of the iceberg. And if we want to, the first thing that we need to do is get either you got to work at the conscious mind level, or you got to work at the unconscious mind level, one of these levels, in order to affect the other. So at the conscious mind level, we can do practices like meditation, breath work, etc. But really what they're doing as we start working deeper is they're getting us into our unconscious mind. Because as you were saying, all that patterning is clouding imagine that what we're trying to get to is the sky, but the mind is so filled with stuff. It's so filled with so many clouds, even good things, even rainbows and butterflies, but it's so full of stuff that we cannot see the sky behind it. And so really it's almost more about it's a subtraction of doing, a subtraction of thinking. It's quieting all that stuff down so that you can see the truth of what's really there.
From a metaphysics of Tao perspective, we refer to the primordial mother, the void, as the animation to all things. And the animation to all things animates the consciousness, consciousness animates the spirit, spirit animates the energy, energy animates the material or the body. And so everything that's low frequential, I love that noted, because how we refer to your access to this is that you are, basically light to wave to matter. You are creating through your attention intention. The Shen Gong point is when these two meet and actualize the spirit within the material state. That's when you have imperium dominion over, or maestro over, this tapestry that we refer to as your version of reality. That's when things really get kind of saucy. So when you do that, all of a sudden you're aware that the currency of this material state is energy potential. And that energy potential is vibratory, frequential, and has resonance. And that resonance, once you meet it, oh, yes, it will be yours. Oh, yes, it will. I mean, that's most manifestors tend to sell this idea of. And I find it interesting because most people today, I refer to it as spiritual bypassing. They want to be Brahman, consciousness, healing, cosmic knowing, all this kind of stuff. And what happens is they end up on my doorstep going, I got the superpowers, and now I'm literally falling apart at will because I can't handle the re-entry. So they hit that peak. They're what we refer to as sensory perception is absorbed. They have all these superpowers. I can heal people at will. I could do this and read minds, blah, 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 blah. And this is all fantastic. And then they can't hold it because they haven't foundationally put in what is necessary for this avatar to hold the signature of your spirit in this material state. So then, of course, things start to go south very quickly. And, who you going to call? San Qing. it ends that way because people cannot hold this resonance. How do you integrate? Because we refer to these three phases as stress, adaptation, and then expansion. And the adaptation is really contraction. It's always a contraction expanding. Creation, completion, and then rebirth. How is it through that meditation state? Because people refer to this as subtle. I'll be very clear, none of it's subtle. Once you access this material, it's substantive. It's like, it's tangible. And so these moments that we're having where we can talk and feel a charge of energy through our body because we're unified, this is what we call psychokinesis. People, we can measure that in this day and age. It's very real. It's very tangible. It's the substance that we're talking about. How is it that you get from the mind state, which people believe is separate of themselves, and that's the epiphany that people have? It's like, I left to come back to realize I already had what I needed in the first place. How does it become tangible so they can create their miracles, their manifestations, things of that nature? Because the sleep, from what you're teaching, it's so, in my opinion, everyone needs to learn what you're teaching because this is how you access it.
It's a very easy way for people to access. And I loved what you were saying about the spiritual bypassing and how people can go so far out, but they don't know how to basically be a container for that and live it in their daily life. And that's really where we want these to go. It should take us into the transcendent and allow us to master all dimensions towards the transcendent, but it should also allow us to master being in this physical body with physical, human emotions and human thoughts. And the word that you used for the energy, the primal energy, we call Shakti. And this Shakti is basically consciousness made visible. It is the animating force, as you were talking about. And one of the things that we can do to help people ground into the physical reality while being connected to the transcendent is to create a container for that consciousness, meaning Shakti, the energy of that consciousness, to be able to be held within the physical body in a healthy way. So we just call it strengthening your container. So if people have these kinds of experiences that are, so mind expansive, but then they cannot ground in reality, what we need to do is get the techniques that we do are breath techniques, they're body awareness techniques, all of these that help you bring that energy of consciousness in and through and circulate it through the body. So when we're having thinking patterns or these patterns of the unconscious, they're basically all that patterning, that code has been wired into the body, into the way the energy in the body moves. So as we do these techniques of breath, body awareness, body scanning, we're basically clearing out the way that this programming has literally been programmed into the biology of the body. And now when these energy channels, these nerve channels, is clear, the energy of that source, the consciousness or Shakti itself, can flow freely through the body. And now I'm not only more connected to consciousness, but I'm holding it and able to contain it within my own body.
Yeah, it's a conditioning. I keep telling people, I'm sorry, the universe doesn't have a moral compass. I hate to break it to you. But what happens is you, through your own mastery and self-remembrance, will find that moment of servitude and selflessness. You can't fight it. Once you actually access and create this resonance, and it's a repeatable experience, which is so very important for the psyche or the fragility of the humanist, is that there must be a path of accessibility rather than, oh, I am all things. And people are like, oh man, I can't do this. There's no pathway. And I mean, normally the normal pathway is, inquiry turns into sort of a place of reflection, but we start with the spark of divinity, desire, that then blossoms into inquiry into contemplation, contemplation into curiosity, and that curiosity is basically fueling what we refer to as hopium. That hopium is so infectious for a human being because it gives a pause, an opportunity to create something greater, and that grows into a belief system. Now, that's the crossroads that I would say you must be cautionary in your tale only with the effects of what a belief system is met with, because that conditioning that you're speaking of, that is so important, the conscious, the subconscious, and unconscious, we refer to these 5 stages from my teacher Latsu, which is oh my goodness, I've lost it. Concept, consciousness, knowing, unconscious knowing, and then being. And when I would imagine being is in reference to the unconscious state that you refer to. And so these types of things are only met with your experience as an experiential moment. This is something that is created. So if you eat a shit sandwich every day, then you're going to receive more of the same. That's how the universe works in a mirroring effect. So you will create the same simulation over and over again. So it's like that moment, that hopium is where things change. That's where I get inspired. I walk past someone that would be dismissed, some homeless person eating cigarette butts and smoking crack, and they're like, oh, this guy's a degenerate that doesn't have any chance of ever changing. And then you flip them $100 and they believe that there is still hope and God and something greater in their state of reality. This is what changes people. That jolt, if we're talking from a hypnotic sort of state, that PGO spike that you need to hardwire the nervous system, because this is, again, what you refer to as so powerful. You need to realize that neuroplasticity is another iteration of self. This avatar is an expansion of self that is emanating, broadcasting, as you put it earlier, over and over again. And we're constantly seeing that through the expressions of self in the material state. So the belief system, if repeated, can be problematic only because that knowing is of a deficient state, of an inverted state, of something lesser than, instead of the sum of all parts as one. So to go from belief to knowing to wisdom, what is the secret sauce, my friend?
Well, I think experience is one of them, is one of the big ones.
Yeah.
So, from knowing, to me, the difference between knowing and wisdom is knowing is we've laid out the path. We understand where we're going. We have a sense, we have the concepts, which are useful. It's like somebody saying, this is how you get to California. That's helpful. That's the knowing. The wisdom is actually having gone there.
Mm.
And that is what these practices offer us, right?
Yeah.
The wisdom that comes from having been to those places. And then we bring it back as knowledge that we then can communicate to others, but no one can take it from you. Once you've seen the truth, it's like riding a bike. You've had a glimpse of it, and you can never unknow what you have known, the wisdom that you have experienced.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, the experiences, it trumps everything. We can talk about all different facets of scientism, materialism, theology. They're all being integrated at some degree. And the truth is, come on, guys, we can all get along. Let's do this. Let's turn it back into something that, there's no absolute. Anyone that comes to you with an absolute, I always tell them, run in the other direction. And they're like, oh my goodness, Jifu, because the only absolute that'll ever be created is yours. Your absolute truth is determinative by your experience, and that you may come to the conclusion that everyone's been speaking this wisdom for most of your natural born life, and you only meet it at the next breath that transitions you to another experience. Or you may be aware through your ancient teaching or mine that it is possible now, that it doesn't have to be, a Steve Jobs brain fart. Oh, it's much brighter over there, as the last words of enlightenment, that perhaps maybe had he integrated into his own path through his lifetime, it wouldn't have had to come to that. And so, it starts to emanate through the body, as you put it. So the neuroplasticity, and this is where I find fascinating, because we use the alchemy to codify that. When I say immortality crystallized in the material, we are bringing the goods, we are bringing the receipts, and it's going to be as palpable and as tangible as your flesh, only it's an energetic architecture that you can call on at will to basically, and I'm going to say it very clearly, manipulate the material. Yes, manipulate. What does that mean? It means you're altering something that is distorted, a low frequential state, through your resonance and returning it to whole. That's the magic. From a Taoist perspective, you bring that wholeness in, and it doesn't matter. You can't fight it. People will have two adverse effects. They'll either be drawn to this state as their own wholeness is being remembered, or they will be repelled from it because all their proverbial BS is coming to the surface like a floating turd in a bowl. I hate to use these analogies, but that's what happens. It comes to the surface. You cannot ignore it. It's like, okay, it's all your fault. Okay, sure. I've been the catalyst and whipping boy for thousands of people over the last 36 years. I'm okay with it. Yes, it's all me. And then, of course, the Tourette's, the spiritual Tourette's sets in once they regulate to the next level. It's like, oh my goodness, I've never felt so amazing. Thank you, Jifu. I don't know what I was thinking. That's all right. Multifaceted is the answer to the question, but ultimately you're going to realize there are different facets of your personality that you never knew you had.
I love what you were saying about the neuroplasticity and bringing that in. What I heard was that is what it depends. Whatever you're identified with is what you bring into your material reality. Literally, what you repeat over and over. If it's your beliefs or what your parents said to you when you were 10 years old or whatever it is, and we keep replaying that same tape over and over, that is literally through neuroplasticity what we are bringing into the body. We're bringing it into material form. We recreate it over and over. It happened maybe 40 years ago, but we are recreating it in this moment by repeating it. And every time we realign with this transcendent self, the silence, the sky behind all the clouds of the mind, then that over time becomes what we begin to embody, what we bring through neuroplasticity. That is what we bring into the nerves and cells of the body. So in the yogic tradition, there's a technique called nyasa. And it's very interesting because it's from at least, I would say, at least 1,000 years ago that you can find these texts. And they talk about how when we've been identified with all our old karma, these old patterning, that's what gets manifested into our body. And this nyasa is a way of clearing out those effects by realigning with our source nature. And so essentially the way this technique begins is that you put your hand on your heart and you say, so hung, I am that. Not I am what my father said to me when I was 10 years old. I am that. I am that sky behind everything. And then through this nyasa, you literally bring in to all the major joints of the body, all the major nerves, all the cells. Through your attention, you bring that consciousness into every part of your body. And this is one of the major parts of Yoga Nidra. And I find it so fascinating because it really fits with what you were saying here.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, wow. It really comes down to this sort of understanding. I mean, when we use the alchemy, we use the three treasures, the pineal, thalamus, and the pituitary gland, as the alchemical fun factory. And from a scientism perspective, you use the outer to create the inner, then to basically create the outer. So you're taking in through the self-receptors of the skin, the dermal layer, you're absorbing that in, accessing that alchemical fun factory, and using the culture medium of the blood to shuttle your abilities at a cellular level in all different ways, shapes, or forms. But if you wanted to take it to a very slow state of sort of like phasic model, this is the kind of way that we sort of alchemize things from a scientism perspective. Ultimately, attention, intention will form these things. But if you want to get deeper into the neurology, down to what some people would confirm or basically discount, a subatomic level, we are getting into that state from the smallest to the largest awareness, from macro to micro. You are all is one, one is all. It's really that simple. You are, abundance, timeless, endless, limitless, infinite, the truth to everything. As we will refer to it within Taoism, your gratitude and appreciation for all things is anchored in the fire that is the center point that basically births the truth to your reality, and then you are able to create from that. And I believe that your method of teaching as ancient is very, very much in line with this ancient teaching that I share. And that's really something that most people, they get it bastardized or they manipulate it. And, I'm always interested in hearing how people teach, especially Taoist alchemy. And to be quite honest, I've never met someone that's been able to teach it, because most of the people are just taking bits and pieces and then they're manipulating it. I'm not an absolute or a what do I call it? A purist at all, but I also smell BS. And it's like, if you're going to teach someone something, teach them. Don't get all clouded in what we refer to within Taoism. It's called the rice bowl. And people are like, what is rice bowl? It means that I got to pay my bills, bro. So I'll just create a bunch of BS that keeps you on, because most people are shut off from their true knowing. And channeling for Taoism is like the utmost highest state of awareness, because you want to have a dialogue with a monologue. Your dialogue with your spirit, your environment, everything is actually the monologue of the primordial mother that emanates through you as a true evidence of divinity in this material state. So, manipulation wise, you can see it 1,000 times over. And most recently, a lot of that stuff is coming out with, out of body experiences, which never seem, a boring bauble that people get obsessed with. Yet it's like, okay, we'll make sense of that. I've only ever come across 2 Kundalini masters in my lifetime, and they were both from the jungles of Thailand. And I got to tell you, they could levitate, they could shock you at will. I teach people how to do both of those things. And people are like, well, if you could teach me, why don't you do it, Jafu? Because I couldn't give a shit about that type of processes. It doesn't. What fires me up is witnessing physical healings, mental, emotional, spiritual stuff. That excites me. And I love watching people blossom into their own true self. But what I wanted to bring the attention to is those 2 guys personally, on a personality level, were very corrupted and bankrupt. They were horrible people, but they were able to master an energetic potential. That doesn't make you spiritual. It doesn't make you whole. It doesn't make you an emanation of a divine sense when you are able to master a conditioning. So people need to be aware that there are different facets. What would you say to that and speak on that within your own path?
I'm completely with you. First of all, this is so the first thing you were saying is how what I'm seeing more and more is that people they appear to have the whole picture, but they don't. And within the slice that they're teaching, they have a level of mastery, but they don't understand how, either they don't understand or they simply don't communicate the whole picture. And I think for most people, it's simply they don't understand. They find the part that's the most commercial, the most sellable, all of that, but it does not actually speak to the whole picture. It's one little slice of the whole thing. And usually it is that which speaks to the ego. So I want to be able to do this. I want to do this. I want to do this. What's common? I and do, which is only reinforcing the illusion of the separate self, the ego. This is why the true masters, like you said, you could do it, but you're not interested. And that's the sign of a true master. The ones who are out there, possibly, some may show just for the purposes of teaching. That's one thing. But if there's this kind of look at me, what I can do, those powers have now become co-opted by the incomplete self, by the ego. And so in the Yoga Sutras, they actually talk about this, all the powers that one can develop. And then after going through all of them, they say, be careful, because this could be the very thing that leads you back into self-identification and away from the transcendent self. So I'm completely with you.
You make a great point. And I always, when I witness or notice that, it becomes problematic, and I bring the students' attention to it, because there's constant phases of transformation. And what's most important is that you don't get off the yellow brick road. Don't get distracted by one node of awareness. And what happens is most people then identify. I have witnessed in my biological lifetime, in this incarnation, reincarnation, however you want to perceive it, thousands of physical healings that go beyond anyone's contemplation of logic, from bones fusing, flesh melding before my eyes, tumors disappearing. I've seen it all over and over again. I see it on a daily basis because I meet the day with a wonderment that was the first moment that first time I ever saw your face. That moment is how I received it 36 years ago. And I still act like that today. Like, oh my goodness, this is so profound. I don't have words. My relationship with my teacher, Latsu, that I started channeling 36 years ago, is still the same today, and has transformative, visceral, somatic, kinesthetic response that is undeniable. This is where, if you're thinking, you're not knowing. If you're knowing, you are feeling. This does not mean, you get past the desire to consume information, because you can go on for a lifetime. There are millions of different methods. It's like, what is serving you in the state of remembrance that will be your path. And if you just continually just be obsessed with, physical healing, most of these healers end up on my doorstep because they're inverted. So they absorb, they become extremely intuitive. But what happens is because I didn't balance the energy, I'm a psychic, I'm a medium, I'm a channel, I'm a healer, I'm a clairvoyant. These are all fantastic facets of self. But if you stay inverted, instead of balancing the energy, creating foundations so you can hold that, it corrupts the body. And if I've had a penny for how many healers I've watched diminish from the age of 30, they don't make it past 50 or 60. They just burn out because they light their candle at two ends. They don't know how to condition the physical body, bring that transcendence and materialize it into this state so that you are having commandeer or imperium. You are maestro to the 50 trillion cells. You must saturate the body with this divine actualization. And then all of a sudden, you go to town on things. But if you have your attention, intention, which we spoke about earlier, most people get excited. Oh, well, look, I can do all this healing and people see I'm channeling, but they don't realize they're what I refer to as selling their soul. And they just keep, so whenever they're in their client sessions or they're in a group healing people, and this is a battery pack that is going down and down and down. And then all of a sudden they're like, what's going on? My arm just fell off. My eyeballs just dropped out of its socket. I'm literally crumbling before my very eyes because you didn't take the time to master the foundational levels so you can obtain and hold the resonance that we're speaking of. And that's where people freak out and they have nervous breakdowns. This is the evidence of, Kundalini awakenings gone wrong, where you get psychotic breaks and you become, in a psychosis of unreturned results because you just don't have any baseline. You become, schizophrenic, bipolar. We could go through the myriad of different diagnoses of what psychology would perceive as your experience. But the truth from a metaphysical level of the energy potential is being able to condition yourself. And I've had many, being a priest in two lineages of Taoism, I have ordained in two lineages, whatever. I needed sense of what I experienced 36 years ago before that path, so I could help people teach themselves to remember. But one of those things was exorcisms. And people are like, oh my goodness, I'm so scared. It's exercising a stuck or limited energy, and that entity may be very clear depending upon your own perception of creation. You may have created a relationship with something, but you can liberate that energy and it returns to you as whole. It doesn't have to be, I'm stuck in an episode of The Exorcism, the movie, or something like that. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm with you. So I'll back up to one of the things you were saying, which I found really interesting, is about healers who, when they get inverted, what happens. And what occurred to me was, I wonder if part of what's happening is because it's so self-identified, I can do this, I can do that, rather than being in a state where we're allowing this to move through us, but there's no identification with the power itself or what that power itself is doing. It's just allowing yourself to be like an empty channel for that to occur. Because if there's any identification, either within ourselves, look what I can do, or with what's happening for the other person, that's when I feel like it's caught. Then it starts to act, it starts to get stuck within the system of the person who's doing it, who's creating the healing, or who's the channel for the healing. And then you were also talking about something else related to that, but that I lost it.
Sorry, you just go, son, just pause for a minute.
No worries.
But no, I mean, and that's what happens. Any healing I've ever experienced or witnessed, I'm no place, no person, no thing. I'm every place, every person, everything. And that's the paradox in your mind, is that you're able to obtain that. But it's an actual quickening that takes place where everything melts before your very eyes. When I'm experiencing a what someone would refer to technically as an astral projection right now. I'm in the universe playing around with stars, walking on the moon, and experiencing the tactile, tangible effects of that. Yet I'm having a conversation with you. There's nothing more interesting than like the entry level, what my dear friend Tom Campbell would refer to as the low entropy level of Western culture in an epic pop culture moment back in 1983 with this talk show host by the name of Oprah Winfrey, and she had on this guy by the name of Deepak Chopra. And he's sitting there in the lotus position, and they panning on her, and she goes, "Oh my goodness, I'm so excited! We have a new guest." And the whole audience is like, "Yeah, oh, whoa!" And it's like, it's Deepak Chopra, and everyone is sort of integrating this idea because, as much as I'm not a fan of Oprah, she definitely contributed to a Western awareness of each Eastern cultures that were not, even through the path of Yoga Nidra and all the ancient teachers from the East that came over from the early 1900s all the way through to the Beatles, tripping out on psychonautic experiences, attempting to make sense of this twisted fate that they have as an amplification of self through their music. Yellow Submarine is an example. You have that moment where she's like, "I got Deepak Chopra," and sitting in the lotus position. "How are you, Deepak?" And this is the defining moment in my opinion. This is just my opinion. And he goes, "I'm doing great. My body's here, but I'm not." And she goes, "I'll get right back to you after this commercial break. It's so great to have you on." And they cut that because it screws with the mind. People cannot understand that level of awareness. And quite frankly, the disharmony of the current obsession with out-of-body experiences, astral projection, sleep paralysis, is this delusion that you are separate or you need to leave your physical body to obtain this awareness. Psychics, mediums, channelers, they're doing it all day long, yet the average person identifies with, "I must leave this physical body to obtain enlightenment." Yet when you are aware of that, I access information instantaneously and I operate and all that, and it's tangible. I feel it. My barometer is my tuning fork. The physical body, the neurology we speak about makes it possible so that you are not, these energy is not subtle, ladies and gentlemen, but you have to attune yourself. The sensory perception is a development skill, and you need to find a way to acquire that tuning. And I'll shut up right now. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I loved what you were saying about this whole idea that we think we need to get out of the physical body. And I'm going to argue actually that that's exactly what keeps you grounded. That's the problem. So I'm not saying you can't astral project or whatever, but you need to be able to come back into your physical body. That is your grounding. And exactly what happens is when people are so far out there, they cannot ground into their body, or their body doesn't have the strength of the container to hold these big experiences they've been having. That's when they get into trouble. So it's actually, it's like when somebody has a trauma from a stress response, they're doing this. This is from a survival response, different than spiritual. But a person, when they experience like a freeze response, they just kind of go out of their physical body. And this is why they say, like, where I heard a yell and didn't even realize it was my own voice. So out of a survival response, the body, you kind of jump into the energy body and out of the physical body. Because why? Because that's where the trauma is occurring. The problem is, like, for someone who has a trauma, if they never fully get back in, they're ungrounded. They're halfway between the energy body out there and they never fully get back in. And so everything is slow to process, the difficulty feeling. A lot of these symptoms that we see are actually related to the fact that they couldn't fully get back into the physical body. So that may not just happen with a trauma. What if that also happened with a spiritual experience that I was not able to did not know how to fully ground it in my body, and now I'm kind of stuck halfway in, halfway out?
This is what we call half-baked. I want you completely cooked.
Yes.
And so, I always use the rule of thumb that your absolute is that you are the mother. You are eternal, immortal, forever, forever. You animate everything. But to come to that realization, you must recognize that you are nothing at the same time. Ooh, Jaffu, this is blowing my mind. Yeah, well, it's a processes of conditioning. And, when the distortion, when people are like, "Oh my goodness, I got out and then I had a thought and then I was drawn back in." is just counterintuitive in the sense that just like any type of indoctrinated dogma or cult, and how people poo-hoo religion right now, which unfortunately I'm a fanboy. I am a priest in two lineages of Taoism, so I believe everyone can get along. But most people want to go, oh, I want to demystify all this stuff. I'm sorry, but I've talked to many scientists and physicists that something as simple as an alchemical process we refer to, the death of the star, the rising of the red phoenix, and the evoking of black hole energy, which comes from the center point, which is referred to within some scientific model as 0 point. And furthermore, that 0 point would be referred to as the superglue of another hypothesis that they consider, or has been validated supposedly through other means, through two sciences back in 2022, that the quantum model is actually real. And they have the receipts to prove as such through zeros and ones. Again, another scientism is another language, it's another religion, it's another processes. I'm very fond of it, but it is not an absolute. If it makes sense to you, I'll use it to help you understand more indigenous, deeper, introspective processes. But the truth is, it all comes down to, I'm a Pepsi challenge guy from the 80s. I'll throw down with anyone. I'll take the Pepsi challenge with anyone. Show me what it is that you speak of. It's like, I can show you a visceral somatic kinesthetic response that would be referred to from my parapsychologist friends as a psychokinetic experience. This is real. And then from that, we will transition into mind-bending experiences that are beyond your imagination, that are actualized. And then you literally spend 6 months attempting to make sense of how that's possible. That's how you shift someone's consciousness. Now, it's a little dramatic. I shake the tree a little bit, but hey, sometimes if I'm meeting that stream and we are intersecting, that means that we are supposed to experience that together, in my opinion. That's the mandate and directive I've been given. So someone follows or is on the path and we meet, then you're supposed to get blown away. That's just how it is. Now, people can go, well, that's not my knowing. I'm like, okay, so quickly get off the path before you have to experience something that you may not make sense of. And that's the neurological thing I love the way you say that, because people have Kundalini awakenings and it's like they wish they never did, because the system, it's like a shock. Now, at a certain point, through my own training, I used to do a lot of thunder magic, and it's on my repertoire, on my menu if I look it up, but it's basically you're condensing and absorbing the energy. We refer to it as absorbing the riches, and then you can basically give people electric charges at will. So the recipient, I would have them stand on a wet cloth on the ground, and then I would, between myself and the recipient, I would take something tangible like a leaf or something that would intercept the direct primal charge that would come from the electricity I'm conjuring up within my own system and shooting it into their nervous system. And it's fun and it resets the nervous system. But quite frankly, it takes a tremendous amount of conditioning and effort to hold that. And it's exciting. And I was part of my training with my teacher, and I teach others that. But it's like, it's a much to do about nothing, in my opinion. Okay, so you give people a profound experience where you move energy through them at will that resets their whole system. That is fantastic. Now move right along. Move right along. I'm the energy charging guy, because I can witness through my attention intention and change the probabilities, and have grandma be in a coma, going to die in the next 3 hours, and awaken and return back to normal programming through my attention intention. And that takes me one fraction of a second to intercept and return everything to whole. So when you're returning things to whole, you are a resonance. It's not me. All I'm doing is interjecting the possibility of this resonance, and people clamor to it. Like I was talking about, the adverse effects of the dualistic experience we're having. And if you bring that in, more likely than not, I've witnessed 9 times out of 10 people will take it. They will remember and they want to go back to that resonance. All you're doing is a tuning fork. All I'm doing is tuning in and then they're going, oh, I remember that. And they adjust to that tuning fork and that resonance, and then all of a sudden miracles take place. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so interestingly, my dad is actually a Kundalini yoga master, and so I'm familiar with what you're talking about. I love hearing it just in different words, which it always adds a different dimension. And this process of basically transmitting electricity, you could say, is called Shaktipat in yoga, in the Kundalini tradition. And what you said is when this is transmission happens, really a lot of it has to do with them, because if they are open, if they trust you, if they're ready to be in resonance, it will have an effect. But it's like you can pass it on to them, but they have to be able to keep it and keep it going and keep it alive. And some people, get the big high and the big hit, and it's a big opening, but then they cannot maintain it themselves. And so it's one more experience to be able to talk about at cocktail parties. But for others, they take that awakening, that little bit of resonance, to up level to the next level, and then they keep it going through their own practice, through their own self-inquiry. And that can really kind of help them along in their process. So I thought that was really interesting, what you were saying. I also loved what you were talking about with science, and how science, you could say, is a religion, which has many valuable things. And sometimes it becomes a religion when we're like, it becomes a dogma. Just like any other religion can have a dogma, so can science can become a dogma. Well, if it's either this and nothing else, if it doesn't fit in this, it doesn't exist. Whereas the realm of the spiritual is actually, we're dealing in the non-rational, non-linear experience, some of which could be explained by science, but some of which simply cannot be. And if we're limiting ourselves to the rational and the linear, oh boy, then the spiritual journey can be scary, because then there are things that simply don't make sense. They will make sense to somebody else who's experienced it. But for the person who has never experienced something like this is strange. It's foreign. It's even like, is this person normal? Are they okay? Or do they have mental problems? And the example I often like to give is, imagine that you're a caterpillar, and you're a little tiny caterpillar walking across the floor. You can only see, right, left, front, back. And then all of a sudden you graduate to a new dimension. You become a butterfly. You're seeing the exact same reality, but from a completely different perspective. But if the butterfly were to say to the caterpillar, this is what I see, the caterpillar would think they were nuts, right? Because the butterfly is seeing the same reality, but from a different place. That's the non-rational, the non-linear dimension. And that is what spirituality is about. And so even though science is every day taking us further towards explaining things, there are some things that it's like a boundary of which it will not be able to explain, because it is non-rational. It's another dimension. What makes sense in that dimension doesn't make sense in this dimension. So somebody who has their eyes, I've had people, very small experience that I'm thinking of, who were lying down on the ground, but they felt that their eyes were open, that they could see the entire room, like an out-of-body experience, even though that they knew that their body was lying on the floor. So that doesn't make sense in a rational, linear model, but to somebody who has walked these paths and who understands it, it makes complete sense. This is completely normal.
Yeah, I mean, I like to, entry level for most people is what I refer to as a psychic reading. And people are like, oh, well, what is that? It means I'm just going to give you your mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual state inside of 30 seconds. And they're like, how is that possible? In a casual setting, I look like, a retired Harley Davidson bike rider. And so I live in Las Vegas. So sometimes I take my kids out for street magic. And we love to play street magic, where we give people offerings and gifts of complete bliss in an instant sort of fashion. And, entry level stuff for my kids is like basement level. They need to understand conscious and unconscious. And through that, they've developed their own skills of telepathy, clairvoyance, and mediumship and channeling. And that's through me knowing this stuff and teaching it to them without a boundary of entry. And so when you go to someone on the street and you go, oh, would you like to experience bliss? Or how about I give you a psychic reading? They're like, sure, give me a psychic reading. I would love that. And I'm like, listen, I need you to be aware that I'm going to start from the bottom up, because you have at any moment can say, no, I don't want to hear any more of this. And it's always an entry level. You want to start with the earth grounding as one, and just describing where that person is in their own center point. But then, as you were referred to, probably a chakra, we refer to this as a dantian, the root chakra, will give people an instant understanding of their own parameters, because it's the boundaries that they set within their own experience. And when I share that with them, they go, how the do you know? What? Where did that come from? Well, what I can see with my eyes open is what most people perceive with their eyes closed if they're developing clairvoyant senses. For me, everywhere I look is a backdrop of a void, and anything I put my intention to, information and comes in all forms. Light, information, and energy is instantaneously acceptable with my eyes open. I see it all. And that's just that sounds like you think you're a know-it-all. No, I will give you a comeuppance right now that will make you realize that the information is here. And it's not, I don't care whether you tell me I'm the next coming of Jesus. I'm going to give it to you straight. And unfortunately, you're probably not going to like it by the second chakra. And they're like, okay, you get a little unsettled by the sexual energy. They're like, whoa, stop. This shit is real. Yes, it's very real. I am not making this up. I am reading a menu. I don't have a personal interest in whether you tell me I'm the next coming of Moses, I'm a healer, I'm God, I'm this. I couldn't care less. I'm reading the energy. And that's where my input, my personality is not manipulating the outcome. I couldn't care. I don't care. This is information. And that's where people get freaked out. And that's where we enter into this state and can obtain all this at once. I'm sure you and your father do this quite often. It's part of a mastered state of sensory perception. We refer to that. And quite frankly, I would say to the average person that's desirous of this experience is that the only limitation is what you can or cannot create from your own perspective. So if you believe it's possible, create evidence to show yourself that it is, and it will be as such. And so people are like, holy moly. And it's that simple: vibratory, frequential, and resonance. And that's where we get back to, people being able to master energy states. That doesn't make them the next, Buddha or the next God or the next Tao or the next. These are states that are what we call the low frequential state from a Taoist metaphysics perspective, between the energy and the material of the body. And that's where all the distortion, most people just play in that, I call it the spiritual baby shit. They just stay there. They never actualize their spirit, which gives them complete dominion over the energetic realm, which then animates the material realm, which is just a lower frequential version of that. It's been formed into these objects that you can actually see. That's all that is. For you to truly actualize your primordial self as the animation to everything requires no participation of your own. People are like, what? Zero participation. You are not required in this equation. And people are like, okay, you lost me. My head is exploding. And maybe you could speak more on that because you understand what I'm talking about.
I do. So first, going back to what you were saying, this was actually the point that I lost earlier. This whole idea that what I call life mastery. So there are different dimensions: energy, body, wisdom body, clairvoyance, all of these things. And sometimes when we see somebody who has those abilities, we think, oh, they must be enlightened. But these two are not the same thing. These are levels of subtler life mastery, or mastery of the physical being that we haven't all fully developed. But they don't mean that we have realized the transcendent self, that we are enlightened. So I think it's important not to confuse one with the other, because they are in fact two different things, and not to give too much power or attribute too much to that person who, especially if they're saying, look at this, this is a proof of my enlightenment. Not necessarily.
And I mean, and that's the funny part, because when you witness an emanated divine spark present in the material state, you come across what some people refer to as gurus, and their resonance precedes them. They don't speak. They don't have to say anything. You are just instantly actualized as bliss because of their own emanated divine. They are an embodiment of that primordial state that doesn't require. They can stay in their personality, and I always tell people that it's like, I can be a complete asshole and still witness a healing. That is not required. My personality is not required. I like driving my side by side in the desert at 100 miles an hour, eating chocolate bonbons, and I am still. I confess, Your Honor, I am absolutely 100% responsible for the fact that I subscribe to Netflix. This has nothing to do with that resonance.
Exactly. And that's, it makes me think of Nisargadatta, who was widely considered to be enlightened, said, I left my humanity to itself long ago. So it's like the physical body has a personality. It's been programmed. It does its thing. We're just not operating as if we are that thing. Is an extension of the self. It's an instrument through which we express and interact in this world. But we are resting back here as the transcendent self. So yeah, you could have an enlightened master who gets angry, who eats pizza, who isn't nice all the time. That doesn't mean they're not enlightened, because enlightenment is just knowing that you are more than this instrument. And then speaking to the vibrational frequency that you were talking about, we're always, like you said, open up to the possibility that it's always there for everyone. And whether we recognize it or not, we are always picking up people's vibrations. Somebody walks into a room and everybody's emanating something. And we can sense, if we're paying attention, we sense, oh, I like this person, or I don't like that person. Oh, that person makes me feel good. We're already all feeling energy. We're already starting to read people. And the more we open up to that, the more, and belief that what we're picking up is really making it more conscious, the more information we get. But along the lines of what you were saying you're not the doer. I'm paraphrasing what you were saying, because the real place that the information comes in, or the real place that channeling happens or healing happens, is when this body is a conduit, but there's no part in me. The mind is not involved saying, I'm doing this, or should I do this, or should I do that? Everything is simply being done through you.
Yeah. There's zero participation.
Yeah.
That means the finite mind is bankrupt. It has no value in the sense of your own awareness. It's only until you merge the subconscious and unconscious as one, which would be an emanation of a brainwave referred to. And whenever I measured my brainwaves over the years, I've gone between 40 and over 400 hertz, witnessing miracles, because that is the state of awareness. It doesn't require anything else, but you recognize that everything is codified. It's merged as one. And so, the need for approval or the personal value is not necessary. I'm not asking you to throw away. You erasing your personality would be a mistake. I need people to be aware. One of my teachers, Jane Emperor, always reminds you, when you realize you are not of this body, what can harm you? Nothing. And so that is now your opportunity. And I think there's the struggle for many of my monastic Buddhist monk friends that walk the observation of the mundane reality. Their perception, and I've got 10 or 20 friends, the actual path that they walk has a very similar Buddhist philosophy or outcome. that may be different to many others, because there's different variations of belief that goes across the globe. Don't be caught up in one version as being the absolute. But what they've said consistently is, I'm just observing the dukkha. All I want to do is transmute that dukkha and return it. And the physical avatar is not a real concern of theirs. They're not that concerned. So I attribute Taoism, Buddhism, the fundamental difference between them is from my friends that are Buddhist monks. Now, there are very variables of Buddhism. I'm not going to say it's one way, it's the only way, but the consensus within them is that I refer to their Buddhist path and my Taoist path as their Buddhist path is life is a pile of dirt covered in diamonds. They just take off another diamond looking for more dirt to reflect on that. Now, as a Taoist, it's very simple for me. My life is a pile of diamonds covered in dirt. I just dust off some more dirt and it's good to be me right now. And so again, perceptional wise, it's nothing more than that. And you can refer to this within all the variables of a dualistic reality. And that dualism, what does it really mean? It's just you're separating the mind and the physicality, the material state. The truth is there is no such thing, but that's your journey. Your Sherlock to your Watson is the excitement of recognizing all the crumbs, your deduction to be aware, to solve that mystery. And that's the exciting part. Like you and I talking right now, and the charge that we're getting through our bodies is an emanated unified state of awareness that we are humming at that resonance, and we're going, I'm picking up what you're putting down, my friend.
Absolutely. And I loved that reference that you made to accepting the human that we are. And to me, that is the requirement to be a channel of something greater. Because as long as I'm in my human self, not accepting one part of me, fighting with another part of me, then I'm just stuck on the human realm in conflict. But the moment that I can accept the vessel, now I'm free to allow myself to be a vessel for something greater than just the vessel fighting with itself.
And that's the thing where I think a lot of spiritual or religious paths fall short, and they're a disservice to the seeker, because the idea that you can't believe you're only the light and not the dark, then you're misled. Because again, darkness for a Taoist is nothing more than the absorption of all colors. Light is the admission of all colors. So when people get on their spiritual high horse and they're like, I am of the light, I am only the light. When you hit that ground, dude, and your dopamine is smashed and your serotonin is smashed and you hit the ground and you have a low like you've never experienced before, and it's all cortisol, it's all nerves frying, it's all levels and emanations of depression and echoing states that you couldn't even recognize were within you, because they're another iteration of yourself through these thoughts, feelings, and emotions. You're going to want to reassess whether you believe that you're just of the light. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I'm completely with you. It's like what we're looking for is the light that is beyond the darkness and light. It's the ultimate that holds both. And this is what I see all the time. It's like people hear these teachings, they hear a slice of the teachings, they don't have the whole understanding, and they think, oh, this human self is supposed to be like the transcendent self. And the transcendent self, by its nature, like a sky, has no preferences. A sky allows everything to move through it. But a human being has, by its nature, likes and dislikes and preferences and frustrations and anger and joy and sadness. And if we were to try to make it only light and not dark, we create at the human level, we create a fundamental inner conflict, which then actually, as I'm suppressing what I think is the dark in the name of my spiritualized idea of the light, actually, I'm just creating an inner conflict, which is keeping me from the actual transcendent self. I've created a spiritualized ego, a concept. I'm living a concept of what spiritual is. And you see it all the time, like, oh, I'm happy, I love everybody. And you can feel underneath there's anger, there's sadness. It's like the teeth are gritted. It's all being held down inside the body. That is not spirituality. We've just turned the self on the self.
Yeah. You don't want to end up like Robert De Niro, looking in the mirror going, "You talking to me? You talking to me?" And, you know, it's a rehearsal of something that you're attempting to embody, but you don't believe it. And so that rehearsal constantly is testing your abilities to integrate self as whole. And it's always going to be problematic when you're dancing between the finite mind and, you know, something that is separate, so distant in the distance. That intuition, it's so far away. I can kind of taste it a little bit, but you're living it. You just need to recognize that there's no separation, that there is no separation, that it is whole, merged as whole. And it only takes a breath. But again, that's where people get confused, because they are conditioned. They are conditioned to believe that everything is difficult. And I say to people, look, you may be on a path where I need to teach you alchemy for a period of time so you can remember who you are, or you can have an actualized moment like the one I had 36 years ago, where anything and everything happened to me in the course of 7 days. And you name it, I experienced it. You know, it's like meditation, never did it before, stopped sound for over 20 minutes, then went straight into channeling my teacher, had a complete combustive experience where everyone in that channeling class felt like they were being melted, because when you transmit that source energy, it's so visceral that it creates an emanated heat where you can cook marshmallows. And that's what I still to this day experience the same thing. The people that witness or experience Latsu's transmission, it's the same thing. Then go into physical healing, witness gangrenous flesh, go back to pink in color in 40 minutes. Then did a distant healing, clairvoyant. All this happened in 7 days. I was like, now I'm seeing this old man quite clearly, like I see you, and hearing his voice. I'm having a psychotic break, and he's not disappearing, and he's present in not in my mind, but I see him. Like I see him here. He's sitting here right now. Now I'm not 3 cents short of a dollar. It's actually happening and actualizing for me. Now, what does that make? How does that how does that translate to other individuals? Well, I attribute it to this. I'll try anything once, and I accept everything at face value, childlike in my nature. If you use these fundamentals, they sound kind of throwaway. You'll be shocked at what all of a sudden comes into your stratosphere, your perception, and what you believe is the truth, and things will start to actualize for you. It sounds like something that's so stupid and dismissive, but actually you're just opening the gateways, in my opinion.
Absolutely. It's a domain of grace where you're not doing it, it gets done. But the interesting thing about it is, and I wonder if this happened for you, there may be times when the mind is still thinking, even though you're being a channel for something greater. So these things are coming in, all these things are happening, and yet the mind is still there, but the mind is not dominating what's happening. So it's present simultaneous to all these other things. So I just wanted to, you and I know that, but for other people, they might think, oh, my mind is gone. No, your mind's not gone, but it's taken a back seat, or at least it's sitting alongside whatever else is happening.
That's what we call the point of no return, where you detach, and there's a point of mourning where you're desensitized to everything. It's a conditioning. And then you reattach as all things to have imperium, dominion, maestro over the material, the fabric of reality. And so I don't go and sit down when I witness healing, because I also recognize I'm all things and nothing at the same time. I'm not going, oh, San Qing is channeling his spirit guides and lighting incense. No, when I think it becomes actualized, because I am the animation, which means I am nothing and everything at the same time. The mother is basically, I am an iteration of the mother. Now, that is on a whole nother level, because you have to actually experience it to be validated for the self. as that. But there is a moment of mourning where the selfishness to the selflessness requires the sacrifice. And that's where people get all caught up in that. It's like, oh, sacrifice, I can't sacrifice. You're sacrificing the fact that you are being aware that your true self does not require your participation. Oh, shit, oh man, I cannot handle this. But the reality is when you operate, and as you said, as you detach and attach, I can have, you know, a conversation. I could be, you know, running jokes, swearing away, doing all things, and at the same time witness a physical healing, real time. And people are like, how do you do that? Like one of my students the other day, I was doing something and I gave him an experience, and he goes, "You're sitting in your car with your 6 kids. It sounds like a circus in the background, and you just gave me a full body experience that I've never had before. How do you do that?" And I was just talking to him on the phone, like, "Hey, yeah, let's charge you up a little bit." Boom, boom, boom. And he's like, "I can't believe you just did. I mean, how? What? That's the whole point. Is that what I'm doing is nothing." And then he had an experience where he's like, "Oh, Jifu, I was doing a healing on someone, and all of a sudden, all these spirits came in, and I sat back and did nothing, and they're doing this, and then the person, the recipient, woke up and said, 'Oh my goodness, the most incredible healing, and this is gone, and that's gone, and this is gone,' because this is on a whole nother level. The spirit world is, again, you know." 30 years ago, when someone would come to me with a psychotic break and they would be like, "Oh my goodness, someone's diagnosed me as schizophrenic," da, 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 I would give them an exercise or an exorcism, and they would have dominion over that dialogue and be able to at will control what was supposedly possessing them. And so it's a different iteration. Once you exercise the energy, it returns back to you as whole. Now, that same person today would wake up one day and go, "I'm channeling the Palladians," open up a YouTube channel and get 100,000 followers. It just is the way it is. And I think it's amazing. But the problematic effects of that is not conditioning themselves, because that's where most of my students have already met the Brahman level, and they get to the Brahman level and they start falling apart. The hubcaps come off the wheels. They went and they jumped the line. And they're like, "Oh, I can't. I mean, I'm transmitting to thousands of people, and these people are blown away, and all the rest of it. But my finger just dropped off, and then you know, I've got these other issues, and it's all physicality wise. It's because there wasn't a conditioning. And once they get the conditioning, like, holy moly! And the interesting part is, they dumb themselves down to a point, and this is just part of what happens. I have my spiritual gifts; they're online. I can heal people. I can do this. I can do that. And what happens is, because they didn't do the conditioning part initially, they end up watering themselves down. They start losing all these sensory perceptions, and it's a common confession for most of these people, where they lose the sensory perception and they're just down to being this, very quiet transmitter of Brahman, and that's all they can do, because they used to be able to heal people at will. They used to be able to do this and this and this. Everything fell off, but it's not. It's still not. It's not. You're not holding a charge. You've been watered down to this little receptor that's transmitting something, and it's getting worse for you on a second by second basis. And you want to realize, how did all this happen over a couple of years? Because you bypassed. That's all. Let's pour the rest of the Saban and then get on with it. But most people, they don't end up finding that. They find it as they transition to their next experience.
Yes, definitely. And part of that conditioning or creating a container for the body, we talked about, clearing the energy channels in the body. But imagine that what it takes to hold that charge is, it's like your body has to be able to go from, let's say, 500 volts to be able to hold 1,000 volts. And if we don't develop the conditioning, if we don't develop the container to be able to hold that, the container burns out, because it simply wasn't built to hold it. And also anything that's unfinished, so our unfinished traumas, emotions, experiences, imagine putting now 1,000 volts behind unfinished experiences. So these can also lead to psychotic breaks, because now, before we had, 200 volts behind your negative thinking. Now there's 1,000 volts behind the negative thinking. And so we need to do that work also. Not leaving behind the human. We need to work through the human to be the full container that we can be.
Amen to that. 100%. I mean, when I first started, I used to break chairs like they were like nothing, and people would be like, "What is he doing that I'm not doing? What? Why is he having these extreme experiences and I'm sitting here? I can't even like resuscitate a gnat." And it all has to do with what are you prepared to accept and surrender to, and to be absolved of all limitations. And I think the funny part for me entering into it, I came from a bodybuilder powerlifting place. My first teacher was like, "No." I'm like, "What? No." And he's looking at me like, "No. Look around the room." I'm like, "Yeah, they look like hippies that eat alfalfa sprouts, and they're wearing organic clothes. They're in lotus position." And he's like, "You're in the wrong place, my friend." I'm like, "No, I'm not. I was told to come here." "By who?" "I just had a voice. Something was telling me I need to." No. No. And so, this is again a conditioning. Now, after I channeled Latsu from that experience, then he was so bitter. He turned it out to be really bitter. Then he started teaching me clairvoyance and healing, yet he was bitter about it. It was like, "Man, I've spent 60 years doing this, and some circus clown meathead comes in here," like literally his kind of words. It's like, and you just walk in and poof, you're channeling Latsu. Yeah. I don't know what to tell you, but I also remember that I've done it 1,000 times before. And this is just me coming back. And he was a proponent of that. The problem was, when he got me to do a reading on him, I exposed all this stuff that he was doing to try and maintain his own sensory perception. And he freaked out. And one of the things was this entity that he was working with. And I said, "Look, the entity is very clear. If you don't stop what you're doing and keep feeding these students to the energy, it's going to take your life." And then 6 months later, he was dead.
Wow.
And that was a consumption of many things. And it was like this literal, like, diarrhea of like confession to me, because I didn't believe it. It wasn't until like 10 minutes after, it's like someone going, "I've just discovered the cure to cancer." And I'm just sitting there like monotone. And like 10 minutes later, I'm like, "Did you say you discovered the cure to cancer?" And this is what happened with him. I was like, "Okay, so this is what I'm supposed to do as a method." And he would write it out and he would teach me a few things, and you would evoke this and do that. And I'm like, I expect from a bodybuilding perspective, if I go in and I lift a weight, if I train that muscle 5 reps at a time, I'm going to create hypertrophy and strength. This is the concept and construct of how I would look at things. So I applied it to the spiritual path. Just so happens that works very well, because I'm not expecting, "Oh, no, that's bullshit. That's not going to happen." No, it says here, if I do this, this, and this, that this will happen. And when you realize that that's all it takes is to just accept another facet of thyself, all of a sudden it just comes flushing in. And, this is what we do. And I imagine through that conditioning of your training, that what I think are they called CDs? Is that that's called, where the superpowers?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's the same thing. It's crazy how similar things are and how different they are at the same time. Yet it's so funny. You get these people that, "I'm a Christian, but I'm a mystic and I do this," and then they refer to all these terms that are within Hindu practices that you teach. And I'm like, okay, so you're dismissing everything else, but you don't have words within your own faith to describe what you're experiencing. So you go over to Hinduism and then you use all these incredible versions and descriptions that are so intricate and explain exactly what you're experiencing, but you disavow and basically dismiss this whole practice is an ancient practice, but I'm a Christian. It's like, come on now, come on. We got to get on with the program. Do you notice that? I mean, it's kind of funny.
It is. It is funny to see. Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's, I think we've come to the end of the road, as the Boys to Men would say. I can sense it. The hook is coming out. It's, I did warn you. You said an hour at 1:34, so I wasn't lying when I said I'm a master void of time and space. And
Wonderful. It was great. I love talking about this stuff with you. Thank you so much.
I am so grateful for you. I'm so grateful for everything that you share as a collective, as a version of your own teaching, and it comes out in this incredible path that you're sharing with the world. Furthermore, I want to talk about, just in closing, what would you like to offer to the audience? Is there anything where they can take more insight? I'm going to put all your social sphere and interweb under this podcast. Give them something that they may be looking for. Do you teach people this in a group setting, individual? Explain it to the audience.
I do. So I have a Yoga Nidra app, which you'll have as in one of the links. So definitely check that out. That's a way for you to low cost check out what it is that I do and experience for yourself where it takes you. I also give trainings, immersions, and deeper trainings on this work, which takes you into the philosophy, a lot of what we've been talking about, but also how to practice Yoga Nidra to more consciously go into these spaces that we've been talking about.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, my dear friend. It's been an amazing conversation. And to all the people watching, I want you to go out and experience, Kamini. Kamini. Kamini.
You got it.
There you go. Look at that. And everything that she offers. And, clearly she's coming from a lineage perspective, and her father has been delving into this for his lifetime and handing down this awakening and awareness to her. And it's exciting when you can see this embrace and nurturing from one generation to another, and that it's not lost, that it hasn't just sort of dissipated, that there's more curiosity. And it excites me that it's out there, because so many people just go, my parents, most of the Chinese cultures specifically that I work with, they're like, that's old hat crap. Come on. I don't want to deal with the 8 immortals and the 3 pure ones and Kuan Yin and Guan Guan. Come on, man. I'm like, dude, you are coming from something that's so ancient and so rich. And then I give them an experience where, Kuan Yin walks through their body and they freak out and go, okay, maybe this is real. Okay, because it's a superstition that sparks this devotee. And I'm not necessarily a fan of fear-based stuff, yet it's so integrated into the culture that you have to move past that through experiences. So I want everyone to go out and check out everything that Kamini is offering, and you will find the links under this podcast. I'm so grateful for you, my friend. Thank you for coming in and sharing your time with us today.
Thank you. And it does feel like we're friends now. We're definitely on the same page. Thank you so much.
Oh, my goodness. I look forward to another conversation. So in closing, I want to thank you. I want to thank the universe for bringing you into my life. I want to thank the audience for sharing their time with us today. I am your humble servant and Sifu, Taoist Master San Qing, and I'll see you in the next one, guys.